Olá, meu nome é Cássio, sou jornalista do Cointelegraph e atuo nesse setor de criptomoedas aí já faz um bom tempo. Também sou pai da Joana, uma menina de 5 anos que tem um sorriso maravilhoso e que tem uma alteração genética e paralisia cerebral. A gente está montando uma campanha para ajudar a Joana para fazer um tratamento para a paralisia cerebral na Rússia. Então a gente conta com o apoio de vocês e desde já queria agradecer a Exame por essa oportunidade e por esse evento maravilhoso. Valeu, pessoal, fica com os maiores nomes aí do universo de criptomoedas aí agora nesse evento. Valeu.
Hi everyone, my name is Rodrigo Sá, and I'm super excited to be with you here today, in which is the most important and largest event in crypto in the world. My name is Rodrigo Sá, I am business partner and co-founder of Kraken Holding and a business partner at Deca4 Blockchain Advisor in Dubai. And we will be talking from A till Z, all the spheres in this world that is right now super exciting. Now I have here with me today Robert Green, which is an investor, a friend of mine, and I'm super excited to let him tell you his story. Hi, Robert, how are you?
Hey, Rodrigo. I'm doing well, thank you. Pleasure to be with you today.
Super excited to have you here as well. You're from Costa Rica today, right?
Yeah, calling in from Costa Rica. I think you can see a bit of the jungle behind me. So I hope the connection is good, but it should be all right.
No, that we should be fine. So tell me, Robert, can you just give us a little bit of an introduction? I think you're the best guy to do that for us. And I'm super excited to share with everybody here today. How did you get into crypto and why? And how do you see this market evolving today?
Sure. So just a few words about myself. I'm an entrepreneur who based out of Poland. I used to be based out of Poland, and 10 years ago, journey to build a unicorn. I had this project to build a company out of Poland because nobody had done it before. And although I didn't succeed, I managed to build at one point the second fastest growing company in all of Europe. And I happened to pop up as a result on the cover of Forbes magazine as the youngest self-made millionaire to make the Poland's richest list, which was kind of just a real world confirmation of the work that I put in. But throughout that process, there were certain things I really enjoyed about doing business in the traditional sense. Banking was one of my biggest, dealing with, we were bootstrapped. We sold last year. That whole process is a bit of an abstraction to someone who purely loves building. And my first interaction with a digital currency was actually pre-Bitcoin. It was something called e-gold. This was, I think, 3 years ago or something like that. I was looking at ways of making money online, and I touched upon this technology called e-gold, which no longer exists, but I think it was in some simple sense a precursor for Bitcoin because it really gave people a taste of what it was like to deal with a unit of exchange that was somewhat decentralized without all the unnecessary baggage and the typical banking type of things. So throughout my career, I was observing Bitcoin, but I was too busy building my business. And then finally, in 2017, it became too big to ignore, and I took a headfirst dive into it. And 3 years later, this is essentially the only focusing on right now because it's obvious to me that we're beyond the turning point. It's reached a point where there's no return, and if with the pace and awareness growing through events like what you're doing, this will completely reshape the world in my view, turning it upside down, and I like to say finally the right way up. So yeah, I'm super excited for what you guys are doing, and it's just one of the most exciting times in monetary history to just be involved and build things. And anyone who's not building, I love to remind them that just purchasing crypto, it's a political statement. You're saying no thank you to the corrupt and broken system that we have around the world. And so the more people we can get on board, the quicker this whole thing evolves, and the better the world becomes.
Definitely easier. I mean, easier transactions, faster transactions. I mean, not even talking about the fee, right? And it keeps me wondering, like, if it was 20 years ago when we had crypto, I mean, how would you see your businesses and what you have been involved?
Certainly. So, although I had bootstrapped my business, that doesn't mean that was easy. I definitely would have tokenized some of the products we built. I definitely would have tokenized the business itself and sold pieces of it to our users who had significant amounts of capital. I never dealt with VCs because they irked me. I don't like that part of the startup sort of ecosystem. Oftentimes they take advantage of founders, of their naivety, and so on. So if there was a simple way when I was starting out to tokenize a business, I definitely would have raised a bunch of capital and just done more in a shorter amount of time instead of struggling to bootstrap, deal with banks and all this kind of stuff. Yeah, and then other than that, I definitely would have accepted crypto as a payment rather than dealing with wire transfers and all these problems that you still have with banking. It's so unbelievably antiquated. It's quite ridiculous, honest. So I'm just so happy that adoption is moving so quickly, and I believe all the crypto skeptics, sooner than later, they will be using crypto without even knowing it. That's when we know we'll have reached the pinnacle of mass adoption.
Exactly. No, and that's a very good point, actually, that you're bringing up about the adoption, because at the end of the day, of course, there's the jurisdiction topic. There's all the legality behind it. What do you think it's the biggest challenge, let's say, in mass adoption nowadays, and how do you see this moving forward?
Yeah, so that's a great question. I think oftentimes people will touch upon regulation, but I feel there's something before that, which is when we look into just the nature of money. To fully grasp crypto, you have to essentially throw away all your previous beliefs about money. You have to kind of throw into the garbage and relearn what money really is and what it means. And when you go to the very core of it, it essentially is nothing but a unit of exchange that enough people agree on and believe in for it to work. And the great thing about crypto is that belief and the trust will only continue to increase. It may have dips, it may have bumps in the road, but on the other side, fiat, the trust and belief in is rapidly degrading. People are, they're hearing about inflation. They're seeing hyperinflation in certain countries.
Right.
And so when that belief and that trust fully degrades, and all of that capital will into the logical and obvious place, which will be crypto. So, like things like this event, awareness, they build the trust. There's certain educational platforms that are coming, looking to get involved in educating people, because people are interested, but it's still too complex, I think. Although the barriers to entry are relatively low, to actually go through some Ethereum or Bitcoin, it can be a very, very complicated process. Setting aside just understanding the actual technology behind it. So there's still a long way to go, I think, but I think as we are quickly evolving right now, people are starting to understand that simplicity are key. You got to set aside all this beautiful technology that people love to talk about. People just want a simple tool to use to pay, transact, to save, to earn interest. And there's a lot of companies that are tackling that. And so I think we're doing a good job. And some of the smartest people in the world are involved. So there's nothing to worry about. It's just a matter of time.
Yeah, no, indeed. And I mean, when we look at it, from having exchanges that are now transactioning over $1 billion a day to companies that are using crypto to fund their projects and do all the transactions. What really excites you today and what you're looking at the projects? What excites you about how things that crypto are involved?
What excites me is that any young person time and learns Solidity. There's so few Solidity developers. I've been looking around because I've been dabbling with a project that I'm thinking of executing. It's so difficult to find a developer because they're all either building their own thing or they're already involved in some project. So for young guaranteed career, you just learn how to build on the blockchain, and you're guaranteed, to have a bright future. At the same time, it lowers the barriers to entry to launch practically any project. VC funding will become obsolete in the next, if it hasn't already to some extent. Anyone looking to raise a significant amount of capital is able to do so at this point just by spending some time understanding tokenization options. So it's, as an entrepreneur, when I was starting my business, I was so put off by all the bureaucracy, all the BS involved in taxes, accounting, all the banking crap. I wanted to give up every day for the first few years. It was so difficult. And when I think about that, for me, it's interesting because I used to buy this Forbes magazine every year in Poland to see if there was a young person out of the technology sphere that made it onto that list. No, it was always these old people who made their money from when Poland went from communism to the market in the 90s. And for a confirmation that it's possible, because it was so difficult. Finally, I became that person and persevered, and I used that opportunity to show young people that it's possible. And now, with the addition of crypto, you're able to skip all the bull crap that made me really want to quit every day. When I imagine that, I think of all the thousands of people that gave up, people like me, for the past 10 years. And then I think of the new generation that doesn't have to deal with this unnecessary baggage of building a business. You're able to focus purely on your creativity and building what you love. The smart contracts can simplify things so incredibly much that it's just a pleasure to build. As opposed to like a war, a struggle with a system, with banking, with accountants, with taxes and all this stuff. So that's what excites me the most, because once this is more prevalent and more accessible to all, there's going to be businesses popping up all over the world, and anyone who wants to start anything will be able to do so with relative ease. And I think that's only going to be a benefit to the world.
Awesome. I have some question here for you. So how do you envisage the future of crypto and the way forward?
Well, so I'm pretty hardcore anti-establishment. I'm not a fan of government. They've never helped me. They've only hindered everything I ever tried to do. So what excites me is I'm an ambassador for this project called Celsius Network, and the reason I fell in love with it is because the business is transparent. It takes what banks do and turns it upside down. It pays out 80% of all the revenues to the depositors. People don't really know how banks work, but banks essentially, they take our money. Not only do we have to pay to open an account, to run an account, to deposit money, to withdraw money, we're incurring all these crazy fees while they are profiting off of holding our money by lending it out to institutions and so on. So what blockchain does is it allows companies like Celsius to invert that, and the depositors on the that's important, not the shareholders. And the reason I'm saying this is because I believe in the next 5 to 10 years, I believe most banks will begin to fall. With the declining interest rates, some countries, Switzerland, I think Germany, they're implementing negative interest rates for very wealthy individuals. And what do you think is going to happen when those people see that they're losing money by holding it in a bank? It's going to naturally go more efficient systems. So I think we're going to see a tidal wave of trillions of dollars from the depositing industry, which I think is worth over 60 trillion. There's 60 trillion of fiat just sitting in banks. I think we're going to see that trickling into the blockchain kind of banking solutions such as Celsius and others. And I think a lot of the banks will begin to fall because they have such high OPEX, operating expenditures. They're not going to be able to sustain themselves without deposits because that's where their profits come from. So, and I say that because it excites me because I think at this point they have no right to list many of them. And I think people have the right to earn yield on their money regardless of if they have $100 in the bank or 100 million. You know, you should be earning the 10, sometimes 15% annual yield on your wealth. Wealth isn't meant to be something exclusive for the wealthy, you know. It's just something that multiplies while you sleep. And everybody should have that because it leads to a more free society, because I think the people at the bottom who earn the least are in a way enslaved our system. And it's really tragic when you really dig into that. And this technology has the power to really free all of them. So we're going to see a lot of change, a lot of institutions failing, and I think it's really exciting.
No, definitely, I'm super excited. I mean, imagine about, for instance, the decentralized organizations, and we think about, for instance, the applications of, as you've mentioned before, smart contracts. I mean, that's it's going to be insane. The changes we'll see in government voting systems. I'm super excited about what's about to come. I saw a recent news, for instance, from the UAE, where I've been living for 5 years, about the entire country will be going into crypto in the next years to double the economy. I'm not sure if you've seen that. If you've seen that recently, how do you see this kind of movements from countries?
So I think it's a double-edged sword. In short, because once a country implements its own digital currency, it potentially has even more power over its citizens. And that is why I'm a huge fan of decentralization. I'm not a huge fan of countries implementing their own centralized currency because, as we know, that can all be tracked. If they raise taxes, there's nothing you can do. They can see where you're spending. And I think governments are already going too far into how they interfere with our lives. Luckily, there's some incredible developments in the crypto space. One project I think is called Haven. It's a anonymized sort of tokenization system where you can put in your money in it, and it essentially creates a virtual tax haven. Not saying that that's something I'm promoting, but I believe freedom for every individual on this earth, it's coupled in the new world with the freedom of money without being tracked, without being worried about tax authorities and this kind of stuff. I'm tired of the fear that governments use to make us comply with their ridiculous and corrupt standards. So on one hand, yeah, totally, a digital national currency could definitely double the economy, implementing different DeFi solutions, new banking solutions. But people also need to be careful of what that entails. So, yeah.
Nice. No, you're completely right. Thanks for the notes. And the last question, just share with us your latest projects, and I'm sure you should be excited about something that you're now involved in, and among all the others that you are. Just share with us give us some insights there.
Sure. My main focus is a project called Tenset, which is built by a really ambitious group of young people from Poland. And the reason I love it is because I dipped deep into the DeFi space, and at one point I was a little bit overwhelmed with the complexity and the need to continuously monitor and to move funds around to make it compound and such. And then when I saw their solution, it's something called the RFI, which is essentially passive staking. Buy the token, in short. You leave it on your wallet, be it MetaMask, Trust Wallet, or even on the exchange. And any dividends that come from, there's like a 2% tax on any transaction. 1% gets percent gets distributed amongst all the holders. So you're essentially just deflating the supply, which is always good because it drives price up long term and keeps it sustainable. And two, anyone who's a holder, like a long-term player, gets to just receive passive rewards without doing it. And they compound naturally because they're just accumulating in your account. And essentially, the idea of the project is to bridge the old world with the new, the stock market, which will probably be synthetic assets, and certain DeFi strategies, which will be used to buy back their own tokens. So essentially creating like a simplified crypto-based, like we call it hedge fund, that allows anyone to put any amount of money and just hold the token and earn the rewards. And I love it because it's so simple. And I think that's what we need right now, because there's a lot of ambitious projects that are trying to change the world, save the world. But there's not enough simple ones where the person off the street can, go ahead and buy like Ethereum and just put it somewhere and just leave it, knowing that the price will continue up over the long term and that they'll accrue this interest, this yield passively without doing anything. Because I think at the end of the day, crypto can either enslave you, because it is very addictive. It's fascinating. The numbers continuously are changing. You could sit there all day looking at the graphs. The other option is that it can completely liberate you and free you, right? You can allocate your capital, pull it out of the bank, exchange your fiat for Ethereum, Bitcoin, and just let it do the work for you. I think not enough people realize that, or at least allow that for that to be. You can just live a life without thinking about money all the time, knowing it's always going to appreciate in the long term, all those assets, and that you're going to earn yield as well, which will compound automatically. I also mentioned I'm an ambassador for Celsius. I think that's the most elegant solution for replacement of banking that we have so far. It's a very altruistic approach to doing it, and I just love their mission. Their mission is to unbank the million people. I personally haven't unbanked myself. I no longer have a bank account other than Revolut, which is like a neo kind of bank. I despise banks. So I'm so happy that I can liberate myself from that. I have a crypto debit card. Banks are obsolete in my opinion already. You just have to put in a little bit of effort to make that the case for yourself as well. But I think it's worth every effort, because banks are not your friends. That's the simple truth.
Nice. No, and I'm super excited with all that you just mentioned, and looking at the recent moves from the giant tech companies like PayPal and so on. So I'm super excited. So thank you very much for being here with us. I really appreciate all your time. From Costa Rica to Brazil and to the world. This is an event to evangelize and help everyone understand, from A to Z, what is happening in the crypto world and why is it exciting. And for you, stay tuned. We have a lot more for you.
Thank you, guys. It was a pleasure to be here. And again, thank you for what you guys are doing. It's a very important mission to raise awareness and adoption. So thanks.
Thank you so much.